Welcome. My name is Dr. Elizabeth Brownlow, and I am here to talk to you today a little bit about the QEP Graduate Student Research Grant Program. So let's get started. First off, what is the QEP? You may be asking yourself. The QEP is the Quality Enhancement Plan. Every university has one. So essentially, as part of our accreditation process to be a university system, Texas Women's University has to submit a plan every 10 years for how we're going to add value to our student education. And we have focused this particular plan on graduate students. The name of our plan is Amplify Your Impact Thought Leadership for Community Wellbeing. We have this idea that our students have a unique intersection of experience and education and passion that allows them to become thought leaders in their field. And so, what we do is we help you to harness public communications to get your work out there and have an actual impact in the community. And so, with that in mind, thought I'd tell you a little bit about myself and about our director, Dr. Gretchen Busel. Some of you may know her, you may recognize that name. She is in the English department, but she's really well known for working with students on public writing, on non traditional dissertations. She really helps you think on how to get your work out into the world and to translate your knowledge for non academic audiences. And I am Dr. Elizabeth Brownlow, the Public Scholarship Specialist hired specifically for this quality enhancement plan. My background is in nonprofit communication strategy and in public humanities work. So my specialization really is in helping you think like a strategic communicator to get your work out into the world and actually have some sort of an impact on the people that you want to have an impact on. So with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and dive into what this program is and how it fits into that. So the QEP Graduate Research Grant Program, which is one small part of this plan, is supported in large part by the Jane Nelson Institute for Women's Leadership. They very graciously funded this program. And essentially, it's just research grants that are given to graduate students at Texas Women's University who are working on research with the potential for public-facing impact. So, any graduate students that are doing research that they think could have an impact in the world, we don't just give you funds to do that research, but to help you get that work out to the communities that could actually benefit from it through public communications projects. These are competitive grants, and each student who applies can only get one grant per academic year. So there aren't going to be multiple times throughout the year for you to apply. We only do one application process, and it runs for the majority of the year. Now, what type of graduate student work does this program fund? I've mentioned it can fund research, it can fund public-facing communications activities, but essentially the idea is that we are looking for projects that have a clear idea of who could most benefit from this research and have some sort of an idea for a plan for how they want to reach those people through public-facing communications. While you're here, you're developing a set of knowledge and skills that not everybody has access to, especially as a graduate student. You are joining the ranks of a very small portion of the population who has advanced knowledge on a subject. And so we think it's really valuable for you to figure out not only how to learn about things, but then how to translate that for people that could actually benefit from it directly out into the world. Now, with that said, we're not looking, for grant projects that have, a very specific idea of how they would use public communications. And that's in large part because we don't expect you to know. You haven't been taught this before. It's part of why this program exists, is to help you break into public scholarship. And so if you have ideas, that's what we're really looking for, that you are in fact looking to bring your ideas to the public, that you aren't looking specifically to only disseminate to people in your field. There are other avenues to find grants and funding for that. But through this particular grant program, it is meant to foster research with potential for public impact and to help you actually get that work into the hands of public audiences. So I've mentioned community well-being several times throughout here. So I want to kind of touch base and make sure that we're on the same page about what community well-being is. So We go by the federal government's Healthy People 2030 social determinants of health. These may have changed since we proposed the QEP to our accreditation agency, but these are the ones we still plan to go off of, just because it was part of our original proposal. And these are how we define what counts as something contributing to community well-being. So if you look at this list in front of you, you'll notice that economic stability, education access and quality, healthcare access and quality, neighborhood and the built environment, social and community contexts that shape the world in which we live, all of these count. So when we talk about community well-being, we're really just talking about anything that touches on how we live together in this world, how we work together, how we worship together, how we play together. How do we exist in this world, and how does your work impact that existence and actually help improve our shared condition as people? So it could be really broadly defined. Now, I've also thrown around the term public facing communications quite a bit, and this is a term that can confuse and maybe even scare people. So, just to clarify, I want to make sure we're on the same page about that as well. Essentially, public facing communications includes anything that's designed to reach audiences beyond the academic community that you're in. Now, I say campus community because a lot of times we get projects where students may say, well, if I just say my exhibit is open to the public, then but it's hosted on a college campus, that still counts as public facing, right? The reason that I put in there that it has to reach beyond the campus community is because the question then becomes, how are you actually going to get the audience you think could benefit from your work to that space if they don't already go to that college, right? So it's not that things can't be hosted on the university campus that are open to the public, but does it really help you if you're not actually bringing it to the people that you could help, if you're not trying to get this information to them? If you just say, come to me, how are they going to know who you are and how to get to you and how to get that information? How do they know that's the place they should be going for this information? And is that the best place to get them that information? Is that the place they would normally turn for it? And so one thing we challenge you to do is to really think about who your audiences are, who it is you could potentially reach, whether that's the people who would directly benefit from your knowledge or people who make decisions that you think should have access to your knowledge to influence those decisions, maybe policymakers, leaders, practitioners. And so, you may say, well, I have a project that I think would really help other students, but students just aren't in my field, right? So we've had people, for instance, say from accounting that have these amazing skill sets and knowledge about how to deal with a personal budget, and they know that students aren't getting that in the classroom, right? So they create public facing projects to educate them. Notice that is still translating your disciplinary expertise for an audience outside of your discipline, a public facing audience in that sense that they are not experts in your field. And so that's how I would look at it: is public facing communications is reaching people who are outside of your field, who don't have easy access to this research already, who don't have access to those peer reviewed journals that people in your field publish in. Right. So that's what we're really looking to fund here, is projects that not only have the potential for public impact, but that you actually are willing to then start to have that impact by engaging folks in public facing communications projects. So that could look like a lot of things. I put a list of examples up here on the screen, but notice this is not an exhaustive list. We've had a lot of other things come out of this programming and other programming that we have, a lot of different cool ideas for public engagement. So if you have ideas that aren't listed here, that doesn't mean that they're not valid. It just means that it's one we haven't thought of. So as long as it reaches an audience that is not specialized in your field and has access to the knowledge that you have, it counts. So who is eligible? Who are we looking for? So you basically just have to be enrolled for both the semester that you're applying in, which is always going to be the fall semester because we open up applications in spring, in fall. And then you also have to be enrolled for the following semester because that is when the bulk of the grant activities will happen. So I'm recording this in fall 2025, for instance, and our applications just closed for spring 2026. Applicants needed to be enrolled both this semester and next semester in spring 2026 when the grant program will kick off, and they'll be engaging in the bulk of their grant activities. Now, if you are engaging in a research project that requires human subjects, right, you're going to be studying people, maybe doing interviews or focus groups or something like that, or you're going to be going through very sensitive data on folks or collecting sensitive data on them, you're probably going to need either IRB or IACUC approval, depending on your field. Talk to your faculty advisor or a professor that's helping you with that project on it to determine whether you need that. Because if you do, you will need to have submitted the application for that approval in advance of your grant. So, along with the application, you will need to provide your submission number, meaning that number you get as part of your application. Now, you don't have to be approved, right? Because we know that the IRB and IACUC processes can be a lot of back and forth. They can be kind of lengthy. We don't require your project to be approved by the IRB board or by IACUC in advance of applying, but you have to have applied. We just need to have seen that you've already done that step. And that way you can give us that number that says, this is my submission number, the number I got for submitting. Now, if you do not need IRB or IACUC, this doesn't apply to you. Now, the big question most people have is, how much money can I get for this? So it really depends on what you need to complete your research. You can get up to, notice I'm saying up to, you're not guaranteed this amount. You can get up to $5,000. Those who are granted can get up to $5,000. Now, we do not fund all projects because we get a whole bunch of applications. Again, this is a competitive grant. But the strongest projects know exactly where their funds are going. So it really depends, again, on what it is that you need. Some people try and come up with just as much as they possibly can so they can get the most money. What happens oftentimes is they don't end up using that money and then they feel bad. So, really think about what it is you actually need up to the amount of $5,000 to make your project happen. And we'll go over here in a second what it is you can fund with that. But really, we're just looking to be able to make your research possible as well as disseminating it to the public. So what types of things exactly can this go on, right? There are some types of things that it can't be used, first of all, to fund, first of all, and that's something I want to make sure that we touch on today. But first, we're going to go over the things that you can use it for. The things we see most often are research activities for projects. So, whether that's, beakers for the lab, or certain, testing instruments, or, you're doing something more qualitative and you're looking for, maybe you're trying to recruit participants for a research study and you're thinking it'd be nice to be able to table at a fair or a conference or something to touch base with them and get to know them. I need materials to do that. Maybe I'd like, for instance, worked recently with a grad student who is recruiting first responders for a study. And so she goes to first responder fairs and places where she knows they'll be, and she sets up a table and she has a little set of toys for working with children, because first responders often do not have the tools they need to work with children, and that's actually part of her study. So she gives them a little thing of toys for when they are on the scene and they are the first ones having to deal with children and don't know how. And then she uses that to establish a relationship and say, hey, I'm also doing this study if you'd like to talk to me sometime. So that's a great way to use funds for recruiting. And you'll notice here in a second, I'm going to tell you ways that are not great to use funds for recruiting just because of the nature of the funds and where we get them. But, we have another person who maybe is working on a zine project and needed materials for that. If you're having a community workshop and we need materials for that. If you're wanting, we had one student who's working on a literacy project for bilingual students. And so she is, bringing books in Spanish to students. And so these are the kinds of things you want to think about. What do I actually need, not just to make my research happen, but to make the actual connection with people, those public audiences happen? Whether that is access to software or training or whatever, do some investigating and figure out what it is that you need to make that work. We also can pay for tuition for courses related to that research project. This can include independent study, thesis, or dissertation hours but it has to be during the semester that you're applying for. So, for instance, this is fall 2025. I would not be able to apply to fund a course that I'm taking actively right now. But I could fund for spring 2026 to take an independent study dissertation, and then possibly for summer as well, if I know for a fact I'm going to sign up for that and need it, and I'm going to be actively working on this project through that course during that time. So these are all things you kind of want to think about: research activity needs, equipment and fees, and then tuition for courses that are related to the research project. Now, there are things we can't fund, A, because of just the nature of the grant and what it's for, and B, because of the sources that we have for funding. There are certain rules that people give us about how we are allowed to spend funds. And so those carry off to you because we're giving the money to you. And so things like participant incentives. Notice I gave you a cool idea for how to use the funds to recruit people. Just simply using the money to pay people to participate in your study, while we completely understand and encourage the desire to incentivize participation and make sure that you're thanking people for participating in your study and for giving of themselves in that way. Unfortunately, due to the nature of this particular funding stream, we aren't allowed to use them to pay people to take part in a study. So participant incentives is not something you can use this toward. You can use it to build relationships and things like I mentioned earlier, but straight up, I'm going to give you money to participate in this, like an Amazon gift card or a gift or something. Unfortunately, we just can't do that. Same thing goes for, if you're going to be paying student workers on like a research project. Those are things we can't pay for. We can't pay for their stipends or salaries. We can't pay for conference travel. This also means if you're thinking, I want to use these funds to pay for an academic conference, we can't do that because this is to help you figure out how to get things to audiences in non-academic ways. So, an academic conference is not something we'll be able to pay for registration for, and we definitely can't pay for any travel. That's just across the board. We can't pay for student travel, and you're a student. So unfortunately, our hands are tied with that. So whether it's for a conference or to present or disseminate your research, whatever it is, we just can't pay for travel stuff, unfortunately. We can't pay for data entry or data analysis software, or for you to pay someone else to do those things for you. We can't pay for transcription services or interpretation services. We can't pay for somebody to edit your work. We can't pay for anything. We can't pay for any food. Reference materials is kind of dicey because a lot of people are like, what does that mean? Basically, we can't pay for journal subscriptions. That's about it. We can't pay for journal subscriptions. And then laptops and tablets. Unfortunately, this is one of those things that because any equipment that you order for your research through this grant, it will become the property of Texas Women's University once your grant period has ended. And because of that, we can't purchase you any laptops or tablets because it just wouldn't do us any good. You wouldn't be able to keep that. So these are things that we can't fund. Feel free to reach out to myself or Dr. Busel if you thought of another thing that you would like to fund, but you're not sure where that falls within this. We're always happy to advise. But when you submit your application, you will need to submit a detailed guesstimation of what each of the pieces of your work and your public dissemination are going to cost, what you're assuming they're going to cost, right, after a little investigation. And the award we give you is based off of that proposal. So if you say, for instance, I need like $3,000 for this one course, and then I know I'm going to be buying material. I'm thinking I'd like to do a community workshop, and so I would like materials and books and things like that. I'm going to budget myself around $1,000 for all of that. So I'm requesting $4,000 total. All of those things sound like things that we can in fact fund. So we will say, and if we decide that your proposal is one that is definitely getting selected, then in your acceptance, we will say you are accepted for this amount. Now, if you suggest something that we cannot fund in that budget proposal, what's going to happen is if we still like your proposal and we still, the committee decides it's one of the finalists, and that they do want to fund it, we will just be subtracting the amount of anything that is on this list or we cannot fund. So let's say you said, okay, so I want that 4,000 for those things, but I would like another 1,000 to incentivize my participants in my research study and give them a little something for helping me out. Unfortunately, you would say, okay, so that's 5,000 I'm requesting. We would say something like, yeah, we can still fund you, but we can fund you up to 4,000 because that 1,000 for that thing you said is not something we can give you. And that's not really an amendable thing. Once we've said what we can fund you for, that we have gone ahead and told somebody else, approve them for those funds. And you're going to be ordering everything through us anyway. So unfortunately, there's just no way to kind of sneak around these things. You will have to ask us directly. We're the ones making purchases for you. So it's not like, you ask for funds, we just give you money. You tell us where you want it to go. We help you make that happen. So for instance, we pay the tuition directly to admissions. We work with you on ordering materials and then getting that to you. So it's not really funds you're using, we use them for you. So that's a thing to think about when you're putting together budgets and you're thinking about what we can fund. It can be really tempting to look at this list and go, I bet I could lie about it. Unfortunately, because we're the ones who have to give you the money as you need it, we have to go through the proper channels. And so just stick with the list of what's what we can actually fund. If you're not sure, ask us in advance so that we don't have to tell you no later. Okay, so in exchange for those funds, you commit to doing one of two things. Number one, either disseminating the results of your original research, and that can include early findings. I can't tell you how many students are like, I need all of my research done and finalized and all of my findings and everything before I can share anything about it, right? And that makes sense in academic circles, but not everything about your research is going to appeal to the people that might actually benefit from it, right? Those public audiences. So feel free to think about what pieces of your research you could be sharing as you go along. It doesn't have to be a, magnum opus kind of a project. What are some first steps you could take to start building trust with audiences and showing people what you know and what you do? So, you either commit to disseminating results of your research out in a public facing venue outside of TWU or platform. Or alternatively, some people are like, my research is not something that the lay audiences would care about at all, but I do want to start practicing communicating with them. And I do think that some of my disciplinary knowledge is needed in the world, whether that comes from my original research or not. And in that case, you can also create an artifact that more generally translates your disciplinary knowledge to the public beyond the TWU community, right? That's not necessarily based in your original research, but is more based in translating general knowledge that you've gotten from your field that you think more people need to know about. Especially if you're working on a research project that has potential for public impact, but you're not sure how yet, and it's a ways down the way, and you're still figuring that out. So, either of these routes that you take is meant to help you build up the skills that you need and start to connect with audiences. Along with this, there are some other expectations mainly intended to give you the support you need. We have found that students sometimes think of support as just another thing they have to do, when support is really there to help you do the things you have to do. So we require you to let us help you, basically. So first of all, you will have to meet with me, the Public Scholarship Specialist. I promise I'm not scary. But you meet with me at least once during the award period to talk about your public-facing activities, and so I can help you figure out what you need. That is not a reporting meeting. It is literally just a helping meeting. So at any point during the grant period, you only have to meet with me once. Most people choose to do so more than that. But I recommend as early as possible because then I can help you figure out how to navigate the process as well. We do ask that you notify us of any upcoming public-facing work that's coming out of your project, because we can actually help you amplify that and get butts in seats, right? We can help you get people to your workshop. We can help you amplify that cool op-ed that you wrote, right? To share it with people. And so that's the thing that, we ask that you do share with us whenever you're doing something public facing that's connected to your project, because we want to shout it out to people as well. We also ask that you document any public facing work and activities associated with it. So, if you're doing a community workshop, record it. If you have an exhibit, take some photos. If you've written something, please provide us the actual link to it. If also, as well as any pitches, that got you that publication, right? We look at all of this and report on it. It just is proof that what we're doing works. So share anything that comes out of it with us, and you will be asked to turn it in at the end of the grant period. You will be asked to turn in any public facing work that you've done. And so we ask that you just be diligent about documenting it so that when that time comes, you have things to turn in that can actually give us an adequate idea of how it went down and how effective it was. You will be asked to complete a brief reflection both before and after the experience that kind of gives us a baseline of where you started and where you ended up. Again, it's for our reporting purposes. It has nothing to do with you. And we also ask that you acknowledge both the Jane Nelson Center and the QEP when you're disseminating your work, because we are the ones funding it. And that's just a good practice for grants in general. It's a good idea to start practicing now how to talk about who funds your work. For reporting, really, there is a mid-semester progress report, basically where I just ask you to tell me where you're at and where you're going so that I can help you. There's a lot of pivoting that happens in the middle of the grant program. We all, the best laid plans always change. And so I give you that support right in the middle of the spring semester so that we can tackle any troubleshooting together. We can figure out where to go from there. And then as well, a final report. This is just going to be a summary of the experience, an overview of what it is that you did, and of course that reflection, which is basically the same thing, on the experience of what it was like to engage in public facing work. This has a due date on it. This was from the previous semester or the previous year. But in general, it's always going to be due toward the end of August, because that is when we need things. Now, if you are graduating in, say, spring, and we won't be able to get a hold of you after that, we have a call for submitting in spring as well. So those who are graduating in spring, we're like, hey, please get us your stuff before you leave. And those of you who want to extend into summer, you have that leeway to wait until August to get us all of your stuff and take a little more time to work. That's one of the reasons that I have you check in the middle of spring so that I can actually help you determine how much longer you're actually going to need on these things now that you are in the middle of it. There are other types of support you're getting besides financial here. As you may have gotten, I am a resource for you. And our QEP director is as well. Dr. Busel loves working with grad students on their projects. She advises a lot of dissertations. So you get one-on-one support from myself and perhaps the QEP director, if you would like, on imagining, developing, and promoting your public-facing communications. You get curated materials in Canvas. This includes things like resources for your public communications. It has discussion spaces for you to connect with each other. And as well, you have priority access to our content creation equipment that we hold in the Denton Library. We have the ability to get this also to the Dallas and Houston libraries. We're working with them actively right now on ways to do that. But we have things like podcasting equipment, video equipment. We can do little things to help train you on that as well. We have some workshops throughout the year. But generally, we depend on you to tell us what you need. So if you find that, you're going to need, if you allotted, for instance, oh, I need all of this podcasting equipment for my project, but we have some in here, we probably won't give you the funds for it. Instead, we will just lend you the equipment that we purchased specifically for you to do that. And then we will just find a way to get it to you. But we have a lot of it, and we have a bunch of different things based off of your needs. So that's always a conversation, but you get priority access to it while we work out with the library system the best way to work out like a checkout system. So how do you apply? I've just given you a whole bunch of information on what this is about and what we're looking for. So you might be interested in applying by this point, hopefully. So applications open early in the fall semester preceding the grant period. So for instance, this is fall 2025. Applications would open now for spring 2026, going into August 2026. Due dates are always going to be available on the website. They're going to be available on Instagram. They're going to be available on my TWU, and we send it out in an email. So always be checking your email, looking for emails from the QEP. We give pretty frequent updates on our programming. And of course, this website, the website, the QEP website, where you can find this video as well, will also have more information on dates each year. Now, if you're looking at that website and you're going, I don't see any dates, that means at the moment the current grant program is underway and we are not accepting applications anytime soon. But the previous year's dates might be up there. So, think about that. But there are some ways that you might be preparing in the meantime if you are interested. So first off, we will require you to work with a faculty advisor, a faculty mentor, if you will, somebody in your department who can help you with the research side of your project. This grant, most of the support you're going to get from us through the grant is for your public-facing communications, because that's the thing we know most faculty don't have that much experience in. So we're there to help you with that really closely. But we get applicants from a wide variety of disciplines, and we can't know the best methods and know your fields deeply enough to really help you with original research in all of those fields. So this is why we ask that you have identified a person, a faculty member in your discipline that can help you with that project and work closely with you on it. They will have to sign an agreement as part of your application process. And so I just recommend, somebody that you think will actually help you get across the finish line and will help you and can understand what it is you're trying to do with your research and supports the idea that you want to bring it to the public instead of purely academic spaces. You also will need, again, to submit that IRB or IACUC approval if it's needed for your project. I recommend you develop a timeline of your activities. That's going to be part of your application. We're going to ask you, what do you see yourself doing throughout this period, and when do you plan on doing it? This gives us a sense of your plan and how the grant fits into it. I also think you should think through the potential impact of your project on very specific communities. Who do you see your research impacting, and how do you think you might reach them? Right now, again, this doesn't have to be set in stone. We will help you ideate that, but it helps us to see that you have ideas for what you might do, and that most of all, you have a clear idea of who actually might benefit from this work, because that's going to help us help you to strategize. And then finally, as I mentioned, you're going to want to create a budget for that project, break down exactly how you would spend the requested funds, and make sure that total amount does not exceed $5,000. Once you've submitted your application, we have an advisory committee that reviews all of them. It's kind of a rigorous process. But if you're selected, you are notified of the amount that you're being awarded, and you're asked to sign an agreement and complete that pre-flexion. And then after that, you'll go to an orientation where we will tell you, how things are going to work. And after that, you just start working on your project. You will work with us to, decide when you need to purchase things and what you need to purchase, and, how we can do that for you. We will, at the time needed, dispense tuition for related courses, things like that. And we'll just be checking in throughout the year to make sure that you have what you need. And you'll probably just get bothered by a bunch of emails from me as I just remind you that I'm here and you should come ask me for help. But if you have any questions, if you're interested, or if you're just interested in public-facing communications in general and you would like a little help, feel free to reach out at any time. Talking to you is my favorite part of my job, helping you to step into your leadership. And I have an office in the Denton Library that I'm here a couple of days a week. I'm also working from home a lot because I serve all 3 campuses, and I like to make sure I'm available to all of you on Zoom. But feel free to drop in anytime to schedule an appointment with me. You can always do so on our website. I have a link on the Meet Our Team page, and it'll take you directly to schedule a consult with me, and we can talk about your stuff. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you apply.